Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. First off, let me say thank you for putting up with all the compilations we put out. It was a wonderful chance for me to take a couple of days off while my editor Rahul picked up all the slack. Thank you, Rahul. Great work. So we're back at the regular videos today and we're gonna jump into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from PG Liberal. Apparently you're dead. Let's jump right in. I used to work for APHIS, think Walmart but on US military bases, and I worked at the customer service counter where people would come to do various things, such as pay their star card, store credit card bill. During this time, the casualties coming in from Iraq and Afghanistan were pretty constant, and shortly prior to this interaction, I got briefed on what it meant if I saw the deceased card. I got the feeling we had several customers who died in Iraq, and the policy was put in place as APHIS likely didn't want the bad PR on trying to collect debt from widows, which I mean is a good idea. It meant the card was closed, all debt was written off, and all automatic payments were cancelled. Well, if you ever worked or dealt with APHIS, you understand they are incredibly incompetent. Well, one day I'm working and a woman comes up to me and says, "I'm Mrs. Jackson, I would like to make a payment on my star card." I say, "That's fine, can I see your ID or star card?" She gave me her star card and I asked, "And how much will you be paying today?" To which she said $1,500. I opened her account and in big bright red letters her account status was deceased. Her balances were zeroed out. Confused, I asked her how much she owed on the account. She said approximately $4,000. Thinking maybe I opened the wrong account, I asked if she had her star card so I could enter the exact account number. She gave me her star card. Same status, she's dead. She owes us no more money. And I said, "Miss Jackson, I have good news and bad news." To which she gave me a frustrated look and said, "What's the bad news?" I said, "Apparently you're dead." She laughs and says, "I feel very much alive." I nod my head and go, "I agree, you do appear to be alive." So she goes, "So what's the good news?" I smile and say, "You don't owe us any more money." She goes, "What?" I go, "Per our policy, if a customer dies, we close their account and write off their debt." Concerned, she goes, "Well, is this going to get sent to collections?" I ask, "Were you past due?" She goes, "No, I wasn't." I go, "Let me call my manager." So I call my manager and I ask my manager, "If a customer is declared deceased, do we send their debt to a collection agency?" He goes, "No, it's written off." So I relay that information. She starts to smile and then she goes, "So can I use my star card?" I go, "No, it's been closed, but if you want to open another account, you can." So we opened another account. Yes, it worked and she was approved. I dealt with Mrs. Jackson several times over the next year as she liked to come in person and make the payment. I nicknamed her Zombie, a nickname which she embraced. When she would approach me, I would go, "Hey, the zombie is back." And she would smile and joke, "Be nice or I'll eat you." We kept it as an inside joke. My coworkers were always confused. Did anybody else think this was going to go the way of, "This is the Walmart for the military, and here's how we were horrible to a widow"? Cause that's kind of how it sounded like it was going to go. I just hope nothing comes back on OP in the future when the bosses figure out that the wrong account had been closed out, and somehow she was allowed to get a new one. It might actually screw both OP and the customer, because they might have to pay back the original one too. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Read, Write, Sign. Okay, but you won't understand it. Let's jump right in. Several years ago, I mistakenly convinced a friend to sign up for an online creative writing workshop, specifically word building for fiction. We'd taken workshops through this place before, but this one was new, a guest lecturer. Well, the instructor just took his lessons that he taught in person to high school freshmen age 14-ish and didn't adapt them at all to an online format, nor to teaching adults. His "we do things my way around here" attitude was so bad that 3 or 4 of the other participants stopped showing up. And I've been in plenty of workshops before, and since with them, they never quit workshops. Anyway, the world I was building featured an island chain so isolated that the people who lived there believed they were the only humans in the world. There was a little magic going on too. It wasn't as boring as I make it seem, but that's not really relevant. My friend was writing stories about a generation ship headed out to a distant galaxy. For the last assignment, after I'm already well and tired of his patronizing attitude, I know what the difference is between a simile and a metaphor, thank you. He decides that we need to write a story where a stranger comes to town. I emailed him, "There are no strangers here, nor does my friend have that option." The instructor replied rather brusquely that he expects us to follow the assignments to the letter. Again, we're adults. There are no grades here. There is no rubric to tick off. Whatever, fine. You want a stranger here amongst the people who think there are no other humans? Fine. The assignment said we had to write it from the point of view of the stranger who comes to town. So I sent in a shipwrecked guy, and I even had the natives be nice and not decide to kill him right away. But from the point of view of the shipwrecked guy, he can't understand a word of their language. The instructor got a 4,000-word story filled with incomprehensible dialogue in a made-up language as the natives discussed in front of him what to do with him and what his existence means to their philosophy. All the teacher could do was comment on my rich use of scenery to tell a tale. I still take online workshops there. All his classes always have spots available, even after the first day. The other instructors have wait lists. OP, I'm disappointed. This was a huge missed opportunity. You could have written in the professor as the stranger character and then had the islanders kill him immediately. It would have let the professor know what you thought of them. Our next story today comes to us from Jean DiPierre. I can't have a pay raise, but my work trip hotel bills are paid for? Okay, let's jump right in. This is not as dramatic as some posts here, but I hope it will give some people a chuckle. My first proper job was around 1990 in London, which is famously one of the more expensive cities in the world. My salary was 1,000 euros per month, easy to remember. I don't know what the national or London average salary for a young graduate was back then, but I was definitely earning at the low end of the pay spectrum, especially because it was work that required some quite specialist skills and a lot of discretion. I can't give details without risk of making myself identifiable, but let's just say that the organization was owned by one of the wealthiest men in England, and my task was politically sensitive, as I had access to private information about some very famous public people. The pay was bad, but I enjoyed the work, and one of its big perks was that I had to go to Paris for about 1 week each month. While I was there, my hotel was paid for automatically, and meals were reimbursed when I submitted receipts. Anyway, after several months, I felt that I had proven myself to be hardworking, competent, reliable, discreet, etc. So I asked for a raise, explaining that I was finding it hard living in London on the salary. They could not fault my work, but brushed me off with vague suggestions that maybe we could revisit the question of pay at some unspecified later date. At this time, the place that I was living in didn't have a washing machine, which was fine with me, as I didn't want to spend a portion of my meager income on buying one. Plus, there was a laundrette very close by, and I enjoyed reading the newspapers on Sunday morning while my clothes went round and round in soapy circles. Once or twice, though, I had to go to Paris late in the week when I didn't have a lot of clean clothes. So I'd take what clean items I had and get some socks and underwear cleaned by the hotel laundry service after I'd worn them. It soon dawned on me that my bosses never queried the extra expense of laundry. Maybe the hotel just billed them for the total amount of each of my visits without itemizing the details. I don't know and didn't ask. Cue the malicious compliance. Apparently, I couldn't have a pay increase, but I could get laundry done at the hotel in Paris. Okay. For the rest of the time I worked that job, I used to save up all my dirty clothes, including shirts, trousers, etc., and take them with me from London to Paris to have it laundered there. I felt a bit bad about this because hotels always charge exorbitant prices for this service. Cleaning my socks and underwear was maybe costing an extra £20 each trip I made, but I was saving myself £2 at the laundrette. There was never any fallout as such for the laundry issue. After a year, I told them that I had been offered a paid internship in the USA, and they said they would increase my salary if I stayed working for them in London. but I took great pleasure in telling them that their offer was too little too late and that I wasn't interested. Yes, the company that doesn't see your worth until you're about to leave that company and they realize how much it's going to cost them to put somebody else in your position. Isn't it a wonderful feeling to turn down a raise once you've already accepted another job? Our next story today comes to us from Kooky Nefariousness 2. Malicious compliance used for good instead of evil. Let's jump right in. My story occurred many years ago when I worked at a regional supply warehouse for a company who specialized in a certain kind of widget. I worked in the office taking calls from customers and working with the warehouse staff to get orders picked and shipped. Office staff communicated with the warehouse over the PA system. Only those of us in the office and supervisors had access to the PA system. Protocol was that we would state the person's name we were communicating with first and then state whatever we had to say. We were to repeat it at least once. Being easily bored, I never repeated things exactly the same while injecting subtle humor where I could. All of it professional and above reproach, of course. There was a quality control department of 2 people who monitored the warehouse staff and helped when things went awry. These people knew the warehouse from end to end and were often called to find widgets that went missing. There was some friction between the office staff and quality control because of petty reasons that I realized were stupid after being on the job for a couple of weeks. That friction sometimes bled over into the warehouse staff. On this day, the warehouse staff could not find a very particular widget for an important customer, so they called in Dory from quality control to find it while they moved on to other orders. Dory searched the warehouse from end to end but could not find it either. She was out of breath when she came scurrying up to my cubicle for help. She said, "OP, could you tell Mark that I have no clue where it is?" I asked, "You want me to tell Mark you have no clue?" She replied, "Yes, please," with some urgency. I nodded, thanked the goddess for this opportunity, picked up the phone, pushed the PA button. Dory anxiously watched my every move because this widget was important. Slowly and clearly, I said, "Mark, Dory has no clue where the widget is located. Mark, Dory is clueless." The entire place erupted in laughter. All the managers came out of their offices laughing, and the warehouse and loading docks came to a standstill. This lasted for a good 5 minutes at least. The act of this huge group belly laugh was like a valve for all the pressure that had been building up over trying to keep up during our busy season. It totally changed the mood of the entire place for the better for a while. Fortunately, Dory was good-natured and did not take offense. She laughed too, because I had done exactly as she asked. Consequently, relations between office staff and quality control began to thaw, along with our relationship with the warehouse staff. When I occasionally ventured out into the warehouse, people were much nicer and more cooperative. It became a nicer place to work, and all because of malicious compliance. And yes, they did find the widget. If you treat people like people and even have fun with those people, it can go a very long way to improve relationships. It is, however, a really good thing that Dory had a good sense of humor. Our next story today comes to us from Karadak1. Boss insists equipment goes to a mechanic to save costs, ends up costing him $1,000 more. Let's jump right in. The context: I'm a new supervisor in property maintenance, and the riding lawnmower we have is often broken down. A lot of these problems are from years of not doing preventative maintenance on it, which is something I've started doing recently in order to have the machine working better, for longer, and cutting down on downtime and mechanics costs. I've been spending almost all my free time researching this mower, so I know what's wrong when something is wrong, and will be able to tell the difference between a 30-minute $40 repair I can do or a 3-day $600 repair the mechanic needs to do. A few weeks ago, while I was in the middle of starting a maintenance log on the mower, my boss sees me and asks, "Is that thing broken down again?" To which I reply, "No, I'm just trying to make sure that it doesn't break down again." This is when he lets me know that he thinks what I'm doing is a waste of time and money, because our biggest expense is labor. So he no longer wants me to work on the mower, and instead wants me to take it to the mechanic across the city that charges $110 an hour for labor. The next week, of course, the mower breaks down again. I tell my boss that I think the problem is likely the air filter, and he just tells me to take it to the mechanic. Me and my whole crew spend 45 minutes driving across the city to the mechanic, drop off the mower, and sure enough, they had to replace the air filter, and it took them an entire day. They also told me that they looked the whole thing over and found no other issues and charged us a few $100s. 2 days after getting the mower back from the mechanic, and it began having issues again. I knew it wasn't the air filter, but the fuel filter looked extremely dirty. Once again, I told my boss, and he told me, take it to the mechanic. Back we go. I tell the mechanics that the fuel filter looks bad, and describe the issues I'm having. They say it's probably the fuel pump module, so they replace that, and don't touch the fuel filters. This is another 3 hours of labor they charge us, plus parts, and the problem still isn't fixed. We get the mower back from them, and once again, it breaks down on someone's front lawn. I call the mechanic, he acts confused, then asks us to bring it back to them to work on it more. This time, they keep it for 3 days. I told them something was wrong with the fuel filter, and they insisted it must be the fuel pump, and took the whole fuel system apart just for them to agree with me that the problem was the fuel filter. Essentially, because my boss insisted that whenever there is a problem with the riding lawnmower, we take it to the mechanic even if I can fix it. It cost us nearly a full week of lost work, plus over $1,000 in mechanics costs, when I could have had it back up and running within 2 hours and for under $100. It was mentioned in the comments that the mechanic didn't sound like a very good person and didn't really know what they were working on, but it was also mentioned by OP that it's the only mechanic in the city that works on that kind of riding lawnmower, so there weren't any other options. Apparently the boss did learn their lesson though and allowed OP to have a small stock of filters so they could do some of the work themselves and save money in the future. Check out all 5 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.